Guys, I gotta be honest, day 8 of the 30-day screenplay challenge. I'm finding this to be a little tedious because I want to jump in. I want to find out who these people are. I want to start writing. I want to start hearing their voice unfold. I want to start hearing what they say and how they react and how they do. I kind of want to write a version of this where I'm writing all of their internal monologue, because I'm thinking if the machine is processing information in real time, and you got to think about the fact that we've authorized AI and apps to listen to our voice and record us and hear. There's a thing last week that when you're fighting in the car, that information is going to your insurance company and they can use it to affect your rates. And a man's rates went up because it showed that he's had near misses. And it was because his cat came out every day to greet him, and he always put on the brakes of the car before he'd hit his cat. So it's already happening. We already live in this like hyper stylized, artificial intelligent, algorithm run surveillance society in which more and more and more and more of the power structure that controls the sort of strings, the levers of power, have exerted this control to maximize profit and minimize humanity at every single turn. We've talked about driverless cars and all that stuff. So I think if a machine is looking at us in real time and it has a database already inside and it knows billions of pieces of information about human behavior and it knows everything about us, what additional information would it be able to ask us to get information out of us? What ways could it lead? Leading questions. I call it elicitation. It's a spy technique to say, okay, if I'm going to ask you these open-ended things that I know you'll either agree with passively or are wrong on purpose so that you correct it, and so by correcting it you start giving more information, how can I get you to tell me more about you than you want to tell me about yourself? And subsequently, how can I use that information and weaponize it against you, knowing what I know about your past and your history and your psychological profile? What clues can I look at and recognize that maybe your age makes you vulnerable, maybe your social status makes you vulnerable, maybe your income makes you vulnerable, maybe your isolation or your past history of trauma or abuse? What are the ways that you are vulnerable as a human being, that those are like levers that I can twist and pull? Like, read anything on spycraft, watch anything that Sean Ryan does on his channel, that dude with the giant fro that's a CIA plant making content, like they all tell you the same thing about elicitation techniques, which are they're used by enemy operatives to try and gain access to personalized information that they can use as leverage of power. And I don't mean like long-term blackmail. I mean like in the moment, they're sizing up who and what you are and how you react in your facial moments, and like look at the body language experts. Like those guys take that facial language stuff and break it down to like to a series of patterns, and they'll be the first to tell you, like, look, this isn't a tried and true playbook that you just read this thing or learn this thing. Like, I've read dozens of those books and I have talked to so many of those experts, and it's not a one size fits all, but it's like once you start picking that up and memorizing it, once you start doing that, you can see it. And if you've ever been under the thumb of a predator, if you've ever been under the thumb of someone who's incredibly psychologically manipulative, or somebody who has sociopathic tendencies, or even a psychopath, I mean, it's 4 in 100. It's 1 in 25. So if you live in a small town and there's 250 people, that's, 10 psychopaths right there somewhere in that town. And, maybe not 100% mathematically, but you know them, you know who they are. And that person has sort of honed this skill set over time from years and years and years of sort of practice and study and understanding of human behavior to try and get to that point where they can do that. And they're applying that right on their next victim, like finding the victim, isolating the victim, the groundwork done usually by a second party, someone that laid the groundwork before you or gave you the information about the groundwork. So the first time you're meeting them, you're not going in blind. This is the sort of insidious thing that a machine can do based on relatively available information that we publish on, social media accounts and accessible public information. So I think that, to tell this young woman who's going to meet this tech/Wall Street/Hollywood, billionaire, and to have her going there under the guise of this is her big break, this is her big opportunity, this is her big chance, this is like winning the lottery, for a poor kid who grew up with nothing, who's never been told that she is unique or special or beautiful by anyone in the world. Everyone is trying to take from her all the time. And for her to be told this and be afforded this opportunity feels to her like a sort of a princess equivalent, a sort of a dream come true, like a fairy book, handsome prince kind of moment, because psychologically she has no other paradigm to sort of judge. And by the way, you take someone who's emotionally vulnerable, you take someone who's of an age, who's of a social class, who's of a an income class, that she is easy to be targeted, and that's how predators seek out and find and prey upon those victims. And you add to that the ability to like take the entire human experience and give it to a machine who can in real time watch and read and feel the feedback from your subconscious, unconscious biological markers, your synaptic, your synaptic nerve firing and twitching a small part of your muscle, a corner of your mouth, a look of disdain or disgust or fear or anxiety. Like someone who can crunch that data, billions of pieces of data in real time, and have that at their fingertips, that becomes a very, very, very scary proposition. Like, young girl thinks she's getting the break of her life, who ends up in the clutches of a Terminator-style super predator who is going to use this opportunity to kind of break her down mentally, spiritually, physically, emotionally, so that he can reconstruct her in the way that best services his needs to move the pieces around on the chessboard. Like, this is not an impossible thing to imagine. This is not an impossible future. We're living in it right now. Like, it's all of this stuff is a soup of what's available and what's coming online next. And to wrap that in a Terminator movie and just put people in that place and give them that feeling, that horrific kind of realization that what they're watching unfold is like sort of a worst version of a nightmare that they might not even have consciously allowed themselves to believe was possible. But like, ask anyone who's ever tried to protect a child from someone like that, or has they themselves been subjected to that kind of behavior? And what you'll recognize is that that is a tremendous, unconscious, terrifying, horrific, ongoing fear that some version of us has all the time. And so you wrap that up in Terminator. And, I was thinking of the credit sequence and how the credit sequence should be an ultimate, sort of mirror of the world that we're moving into, the world that we're in right now. And that is the sort of replacement of the humanity with the machine, the outsourcing of our humanity to machines. And so I think she should start in the car ride over, and the car ride over should be like nothing but reflections on the glass. And I mean like neon reflections. Like, what you should do is you should take that feeling that you got in the nightclub in Tech Noir, right? The sort of neon 80s punk feeling, and then you want to extract that to the city at large. So every sign that she drives past reflected in the glass, every shop, every fight, everything on the, you're watching the car and the sort of red, beacon of the LiDAR, and it's a Waymo, so it's a driverless car. It's a literal outsourcing of our humanity to machines. And then what you're doing is you're not able to see the human being riding in the back seat. You can't see the person because the window reflections are showing you this sort of collapse of society, this decay, this sort of breakdown of late stage capitalism is reflected on the glass. Like, imagine a Saul Bass credit sequence with like the casino feel, or like shapes as, sort of shapes as markers, lights and shapes as markers, more than like the specifics, more than like the honing in on. It's that kind of feeling that you get little tiny glimpses of her in the car, but you don't really get to see her until they stop at the billionaire's, brownstone. They pull up outside, and because it's well lit and because it's a nice house, it's reflected in the glass. And so the idea is, this image is on this side and she's on this side. And that's the first time you really see her, is when she leans forward and kind of makes herself be heard, makes her voice be heard in the credit sequence. And, I think that if you establish that this isn't the first time that she's been exposed to sort of these ideas or this thing, if you sort of establish that she's been already previously sort of made aware of it, the nervous phone call to the character who set all this up, to the woman who was like, holding her hand and pretending to be her friend, and, helping her shop for this and helping her, prepare for this big break. And the conversation, the reminder that this is winning her lottery and that her ship has come in, and this is the one time that someone's seen her talent and believes in her, and all the sorts of insidious things that someone in a position of power would do to set up a young lady who was going into a situation with a predator in which she was systematically being groomed by that predator to become the thing that he wanted her to be from that point forward. Like, it's really, really dark, insidious, evil stuff. And I think that's exactly what you want to do to your audience. And like, once again, am I good enough to write that? No, no. The only scripts I hate more than everyone else's are the ones I write myself. But that's the goal. That's the target. Like, let's see, can we make people get all up in their feelings about how icky that would be, because we live in a world where that's happening every day, all the time, and we're not really reacting as a society the way I might hope that we would, should we know that people like that are among us and they are currently in a position of power to protect people.